The cold was worse than death. It bit into her skin, into her bones, into her soul. The wind howled across the frozen land like a wild beast searching for its next victim. Snowflakes danced through the air, soft and quiet, but deadly. She held her twin babies close to her chest, trying to cover them with the torn remains of her cloak. Their tiny bodies were shaking, their lips turning blue. She could feel their warmth slipping away, slowly, quietly, like sand falling through fingers. Her name was Sari, and she was an alien mother with no home left. Her village had burned during the war. Her people had run. No one had helped her. No one had looked back. She was left behind, broken, bleeding, and alone with her children. Sari's legs didn't work anymore. The crash had shattered them. When her escape pod hit the mountain, she had crawled for hours through ice and wind, dragging her body, carrying her babies. She didn't cry. She couldn't. If she cried, the children would lose hope. They were all she had left. Now they were hidden deep inside a snowy cave. The roof was cracked and icy. The ground was frozen. There was no fire, no food, no light. Only her, the twins, and the wind outside. The babies whimpered in their sleep. One coughed. The other didn't move. Sari's hands trembled as she held them closer. She opened her cracked lips and sang. The lullaby was old, passed down by the mothers of her people. It spoke of warmth, of stars, of home. But her voice was weak, soft like fading breath. She knew the end was near. Her heart beat slower. Her skin was cold. Her mind began to slip into shadows. Still, she kept singing, her voice shaking like a candle in the wind. "No one is coming," she whispered, "but I'll stay with you. Until the end." Her eyes fluttered shut. The cave grew silent, except for the sound of the wind and a faint broken hum of a mother's last lullaby. But then footsteps. Crunching snow. Heavy boots. A shadow moved outside the cave's entrance. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't a ghost. It was human. He had wandered far from his crash site. The wind had nearly blinded him. His armor was half broken. Even for a soldier, his name was Jackson. He had once served in the Terran Alliance, but now he was stranded, left behind like a broken machine. His radio was dead. His supplies were low. But he was trained to survive, and he never ignored a signal. He had seen a faint trail, tiny drag marks in the snow, barely visible. Not animal, not human, something else. Curiosity had led him to this mountain cave. Survival training told him to stay away. But his gut told him something was wrong. He stepped into the cave. Slowly, carefully, then he saw her. The alien woman was lying on the ground, curled around two tiny infants. Her skin was pale and glowing faintly in the cold. Her legs looked twisted, badly broken. Her hands were blue from the cold. But her arms were locked tightly around the children. She wasn't moving. Damn. He breathed, kneeling beside her. He reached out to check her pulse. She flinched. His heart jumped. She was alive. The baby stirred weakly in her arms. Jackson opened his med pack, pulling out a heat blanket and a small energy core. He wrapped the children first, then gently laid the core near her chest. It glowed warm red. Her eyes fluttered. Open. She looked up at him, not with fear, but with confusion. She didn't know what he was. She only knew she wasn't alone anymore, and that was enough for now. The cave no longer felt cold. Warmth spread across Sari's skin, not from the snow melting, but from someone beside her. She opened her eyes slowly, expecting silence, maybe death. But instead, there was fire. Real fire. Flickering and alive. And then she saw him. A figure was crouched beside her twins. Tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in thick gear patched with metal and strange straps. His face was half covered by a helmet, but his eyes were clear, bright, human, and staring. Down at her children with care, her heart kicked. She tried to rise, but pain shot through her spine and locked her in place. She gasped. The man heard her. He turned fast, startled, but didn't reach for a weapon. Instead, he raised both hands slowly, peacefully. One hand held a soft energy, light, glowing orange like the suns of her childhood sky. The other was empty, open. Sorry blinked. Her people had warned her about humans. Dangerous, selfish, cruel in war. She had seen human ships rain fire from the skies. She had lost everything because of them. But this one had brought warmth. He didn't speak her language. She didn't speak his. But some things didn't need words. The man reached down and gently picked up one of her twins. The child coughed, then whimpered and curled against his chest. The man unzipped his thick jacket, wrapped the baby inside, and held him close. Then he looked at her. His eyes weren't hard. They were worried. Sari tried to speak, but only a whisper came. "Who are you?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out a small bottle from his pack and offered it to her. She didn't recognize the label, but it looked like water. He tipped it carefully toward her lips. The first drop burned her throat, but it was real. Life returning. The human moved quickly then. He checked her legs. His fingers were gentle. But his face grew tight when he saw the wounds.
Oh.
He made a soft sound, a hiss between teeth, and shook his head. She watched him work, pulling tools from a strange case, tapping buttons on a small screen. A blue light scanned her legs. He muttered something to himself. She didn't understand his words, but she could read his face. This human was not here to kill her. He was here to save her. The storm outside grew louder, snow thickening like a curtain between the world and the world. And the cave. The man worked fast. He wrapped her legs, set splints, and pressed a soft gel that made the pain fade. Her babies, both now inside his jacket, were sleeping again. She closed her eyes just for a second. She felt breath return to her chest. Her heart slowed, not from dying, but from safety. But then a sound snapped her awake. The babies were gone from her arms. She jerked up in panic. Pain shot through her. But she ignored it. She screamed, loud, desperate. The human turned fast, startled, healed. Both babies in his arms, close to the fire. They were wrapped tightly and resting on his lap. His hand moved to calm her. He pointed at the fire, then at the children, then back to her. She stared at him. He hadn't taken them. He had saved them again. Tension broke like ice cracking in the river. Her breathing slowed. Her arms relaxed. For the first time in days, she let herself believe this nightmare might not end in death. She looked into his face once more. No helmet now, just a man, a strange one, a soldier, a killer maybe. But not today. Today, he was warmth. The fire crackled softly, the only sound in a world buried in snow. Sari lay on the cold stone floor. Her body bandaged, her legs stiff but no longer screaming in pain. The human sat nearby, facing the cave's entrance, a metal rod in his hands. Eyes watching the storm. Her twins were bundled in his thick jacket, both asleep, both warm. She had no strength left to fight him, but strangely, she didn't want to. He had fed them. He had kept them alive. But her heart still whispered doubts. Could he'd be trusted? Was this real? Or was it the final dream before death? She stared at him. He hadn't spoken a single word she understood, yet everything he did had meaning. When he covered the children, when he placed heat packs under her back, when he shared his food without eating any himself, those actions spoke louder than words ever could, Sharp gust of wind howled through the entrance. The human stood up and tossed more fuel into the fire. Sparks floated upward like golden stars. The cave glowed. Warmth spread again. Sari's breath steadied. Then came the sound. A low growl. Not the wind. Something else. Her body tensed. Her ears twitched. Her people had once hunted these mountains. She knew that sound. It belonged to something hungry, something that smelled heat, blood, life. She tried to warn him. She reached toward him and hissed, shaking her head fast. He looked back. Confused, she pointed outside then to her ears, then growled. Understanding flashed in his eyes. He stepped quietly toward the cave entrance. Keeping low, weapon ready, Sari tried to sit up, but her legs wouldn't move. She bit her lip too. Hold back a cry. Her twins stirred beside her. One whimpered, "No, not now." The growl grew louder, closer, then came the shadow. The creature was huge, black as the night, moving low across the snow like liquid shadow. Two yellow eyes glowed, locked on the fire, on the warmth, on the prey. Jackson, she had heard his name once from the badge on his chest, didn't run. He didn't shout. He raised his weapon and waited. The beast stepped inside. It growled louder, its body rising up on four thick legs, claws digging into stone, long jaws opening. Jackson moved fast. One shot from his weapon lit up the cave. The blast missed. The creature lunged. He fell backward. The gun slid across the floor. The baby screamed, "Sorry." Didn't think. She dragged herself forward with her arms, eyes locked on the gun. Her elbows bled from the rough ground, but she didn't stop. Not for the pain, not for the fear. She reached the gun, lifted it with shaking hands, and threw it to him. He caught it, spun around, and fired again. This time, the bolt hit. The beast roared in pain, then stumbled back into the snow. It didn't return. The silence returned slowly. Only the fire remained. Jackson collapsed against the wall, chest rising fast, blood dripping from a fresh cut on his arm. Sari pulled herself to the babies and held them close. One was crying. The other reached toward the human, his tiny hand glowing faint blue, the same color as her own skin. She looked at Jackson. He was watching her, not with anger, but with a strange smile. A tired, thankful smile. He had fought for them, and she had fought for him. That night, they didn't sleep. They just watched the fire together. Two strangers from different worlds. One broken cave in the snow, and a bond neither of them expected to form. The storm had passed, but something worse had taken its place. The cave was quiet, but not peaceful. The fire burned low, casting long shadows across the stone walls. Sari sat upright now, her back against the wall, her twins asleep in her lap. The human Jackson sat across from her, cleaning the blood from his arm. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Both knew the creature would return. But that wasn't what kept Sari awake. It was the silence outside. No wind, no birds. Crunch of snow. Only stillness. The kind that came before something terrible. She shifted slightly, trying not to wake the twins. Her broken legs throbbed with dull pain. Jackson had bandaged them well, but she knew the bones were shattered deep. She would not walk again for many suns. Jackson looked at her. His face was pale. He held a small, round device in his hand, a scanner. It blinked red. He tapped it, frowned, then looked toward the mouth of the cave. He held up one finger, then two, then four. She didn't understand the numbers, but his eyes said everything. More were coming. She tightened her grip on the twins outside. A low hum began. Not from beasts, not from the wind. It was mechanical. Sari's heart raced. She had heard that sound before. Dropships, drones, machines built for war. She shook her head in disbelief. No one should be this deep in the wild mountains. No patrols. No rescue missions. Her people had fled this region long ago. So who was out there? Jackson stood slowly, grabbed his weapon in a small pack, then walked to the cave's edge, and crouched down. He scanned the horizon through a broken scope. The hum grew louder. Lights flickered through the trees beyond the snow. They weren't friendly. They weren't hers, and Jackson's face confirmed it. They weren't his either. A sharp blast lit up the sky. The ground shook. Sari gasped and covered the twins. Jackson rushed back to her side. He pulled out two small cloth masks and gently placed them over the children's faces. Then he looked at her and held out a third one. She hesitated, but then nodded. She trusted him now. Another explosion sounded closer. Then came footsteps. Multiple. Heavy. Fast. Jackson pointed to the far side of the cave, where the rock wall was thin and cracked. He motioned her to move. She tried to crawl, but her arms were weak. Jackson didn't wait. He lifted her carefully, but fast, cradling her and the babies together. He carried them behind a large slab of fallen stone near the back. They hid in silence. The fire was left to die. Then the intruders came. Dark shapes entered the cave, covered in thick armor. Their helmets hissed as they scanned the room. They had no faces, only glowing visors and sharp weapons. They spoke in a strange tongue. Sari didn't know it, but she felt the hatred in their tone. One kicked the dying fire. Another picked up the energy core that Jackson had used earlier. They weren't searching for survivors. They were hunting something. One of them stepped closer to their hiding spot. Jackson raised his weapon slowly, finger on the trigger, but Sari touched his hand and shook her head. If he fired now, they would all die. He lowered it and waited. The intruders stayed for it, while. Then a voice called from outside a command. They turned and left. Jackson waited long after they were gone. Only, when the scanner flashed green again, did he breathe. He slid down the stone, his eyes tired, sweat dripping from his brow. He had been ready to die for strangers. Sari stared at him. This man had no reason to protect her, no reason to fight for her children. But he did. He was not one of them. And yet he had become something. More, not enemy, not monster, something else. Something rare. Something she could no longer live without. He didn't make a sound when he fell, not even a cry. One moment. Jackson was watching the cave entrance with sharp, focused eyes. The next his hand slipped, his head dropped forward. Sari saw it all. She had been rocking her twins gently, humming soft notes under her breath, trying to keep their little hearts calm. But as soon as she saw the human slump down beside the cold stone wall, her own heart skipped. She placed the twins back in the blankets and dragged herself across the cave. Her arms were weak, her bones still broken, but something in her refused to stop. She reached him and shook his shoulder gently. No response. His skin was pale, too pale. She pulled back part of his shirt and gasped. There was blood, deep gash across his side hidden under the armor. It had been bleeding for hours, quietly, silently. He had kept it hidden, choosing to save her and the children, instead of himself. He had been dying this whole time, and never told her. She didn't panic. She couldn't afford to. She had seen wounds like this before. She had cared for her mother during wartime. She had treated soldiers when she was still a girl with soft hands and no scars. She would not lose him, not now. Sari opened his pack, searching fast with shaking fingers. Medical tools, sealants, bandages alien to her, but still familiar in purpose. She pressed the sealant over the wound. Jackson flinched. He was still alive. Barely, his eyes opened for a moment, just enough to see her leaning over him. She smiled, small, but full of fire. He tried to speak. She placed her finger on his. Lips rest, she whispered. Now I save you. Hours passed. The storm returned outside, snow tapping the rocks like tiny fists inside. The fire was gone, but warmth came from her hands. She cleaned his wound. She used every drop of his medicine carefully. She tore part of her own clothing too. Rapis sighed. Her body trembled. Not from cold, but from fear she would lose him. The twins crawled near, quiet now. Watching her work, one of them reached out and touched Jackson's face with a tiny glowing hand. Sari watched. A single tear slipped down her cheek. The child didn't cry. He trusted the human now, and so did she that night. Sari didn't sleep. She stayed beside him, holding his hand, whispering old stories from her village tales of healers, warriors, and bonds stronger than blood. She wasn't sure if he heard, but his breathing grew steadier. His color began to return, and when dawn touched the edge of the cave with soft gold light, his fingers moved. His eyes opened, not wide, not full of strength, but alive. He looked at her, then at the children sleeping safely between them, then back at her, and he smiled, not A warrior's smile, not a human's, a friend's. A bond had been sealed, not with words, but with blood and breath. The scanner blinked green again, but this time it wasn't a good sign. Jackson held the small device weakly in his hand, his body still recovering from blood loss. Sari sat beside him, her back straight, arms around her twins. Her eyes were locked on the blinking light. She had seen that signal once before. It meant a ship was coming, but not hers. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt fear. Sari had not seen her people in many days. Not since the battle. Not since the fire in the sky and the screams across the valley. She had believed them all dead, or scattered, or too far to find her. But now they were here, and she wasn't sure what they would see. When they entered this cave, a human soldier. Beside their wounded sister, 2 children asleep in the arms of a man they had been raised to hate, Sari stood slowly. She looked down at Jackson. He was trying to sit up, one hand gripping the edge of the stone wall. His eyes met hers. He knew, too, they were both in danger. Now not from beasts, but from the people she once called family. The sound came quickly, ships cutting through clouds, boots stomping across snow, voices shouting orders in her language. She held her twins close and crawled. Toward the mouth of the cave, 3 figures appeared through the storm, armor marked with her clan's crest, weapons ready, helmets shining with blue lights. She didn't recognize them, but they knew her. "Sorry," one of them called. "We thought you were gone." She nodded once. "I'm alive," she said, "but I need help." They stepped forward, then stopped. Their eyes locked on something behind her. Their hands moved toward their weapons. "Step away," the leader barked. "Step away from the human." She didn't move. Her heartbeat quickened. "He's wounded," she said. "He saved my life, saved my children." They didn't listen. The leader stepped closer, rifle rising. "He's a soldier." The other one said, "He's the reason our city burned." Sari shook her head. "He was left behind, like me. He protected us." The leader raised the rifle higher. "Then you're confused. We'll take the children, finish the rest." Sari stood taller, despite her broken legs. She placed her twins behind her, between her body and the human still lying against the wall. Then she raised her voice. "No one touches them," she said. The soldiers stared. "Not one step closer," she warned. The leader paused. "You would defend him?" Sari nodded, double quotes. "Yes, I would die for him." Then a small voice broke the silence. "Papa." "Ah," one of the twins had spoken. The little one, barely able to form sounds, had looked at Jackson, reached out a hand, and called him a name. The same name she had whispered in the night. The same name. They had begun to understand. "Papa," the leader froze. The rifle lowered slightly. The second soldier stepped back. The moment stretched like thin ice. Then came the order. The commander's voice was cold. "Kill the human." Sari didn't cry. She didn't beg. She placed her body between the human, the rifles, and screamed one word: family. Silence followed her scream. Her voice echoed through the frozen cave, bouncing off stone and steel. Family. The word stopped everything. The soldiers hesitated, rifles still raised, but no longer aimed. Their eyes shifted not toward the human, but toward the child who had just said "Papa." The child stepped forward, tiny feet on cold rock, small glowing hand reaching for the man, still lying weak and bleeding behind Sari. "Papa," the child said again. Softer this time, but sure. One of the soldiers lowered his weapon completely. "He speaks," he whispered, "and he calls the human." Another voice finished the thought. "Father." Sari turned to face them fully now. Her back no longer hunched, her broken legs still useless, but her spirit unshaken. "This man," she said, "saved me. He carried me through the cold. He gave his food to my babies. He bled for them. And he fought beside me when no one else would." Her voice didn't tremble. "He is not the reason I lost my people. He's the reason my children are still breathing." The commander stared at her, The rifle in his hand didn't move. "We were told humans cannot be trusted," he said. "We were told the same," Sari replied, "but we were wrong." She placed her hand on Jackson's shoulder. He didn't ask for anything in return. Jackson coughed then. His voice was weak, dry, but real. "She's telling the truth," he said. The soldiers jumped slightly at the sound. He pushed himself up slowly, pain clear in every motion, but he faced them. "Without fear, I stayed because no one else did." Another silence followed. Snow drifted through the cracks in the cave. One soldier stepped forward and knelt. He placed his weapon on the ground, then bowed his head. The second followed. Only the commander remained standing. He looked from Sari to Jackson, from the twins to the cave entrance. Then he turned his weapon around and handed it over to Sari. "You choose," he said. "You live with him, or you walk away and we take you home." Sari didn't take the weapon. She took Jackson's hand instead. "We are home," she said. The snow outside stopped falling. Days passed. The wounded human healed slowly under the care of the same people who once wanted him dead. The twins learned new words, some from her, some from him. They grew strong. And when spring came, the cave no longer felt like a place of hiding. It became a home built on survival, trust, and something no war could destroy anew. Bond not made by blood, but by choice, by love. Final scene. The camera pans wide. Snow melts on the mountain cliffs. A small alien child runs across a green field. Laughing, another follows, holding a wooden toy shaped like a starship. Behind them walks a tall man in worn armor and a cloak stitched with alien colors. Beside him, Sari smiles softly, her hand in his, her people behind her. No more fear, no more enemies, just a family built in the cold. Tested by fire, and now walking forward together.